It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Hey, hey, ha. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson is here today, and I'm very excited that he agreed to come on the show. I wanted to talk to him ever since I saw his show, The Fallen State, which is on YouTube. Reverend Peterson is a man who wears many hats. He's an author, he's a radio show host, TV show host, public speaker, and he also runs an organization called BOND, B-O-N-D, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, Rebuilding the Family by Rebuilding the Man. He's also written a book called The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood. We had a good interview, and we will be playing that for you in a little bit. But we've got some announcements first, and a couple of songs to play for you. First up, I thought I would take the show in a slightly new direction. We've been primarily focused on music artists and actors and filmmakers. Well, actually, we started out just doing music artists. Then we moved into actors and filmmakers. Then we moved into authors. And now we're getting some political commentary type people. And that's good. Originally, I wanted to stay away from politics for two reasons. One, because there's so many shows that do nothing but political commentary that I thought, I just didn't want to be just another show doing that. Plus, politics has gotten very thorny and very contentious, particularly after this last election that we had. And I haven't heard too many politically oriented shows that didn't sort of disintegrate into an all-out brawl and people calling each other names. And I've tried to keep a certain level of decorum and dignity about my show. And I thought if we go into politics, it's just going to go right downhill. Having said that, because of this rather contentious election and let's face it, the sort of tense political climate in the United States, I felt strong that I think we need to have people exercise their First Amendment rights and speak about politics on both sides of the coin. So we've kind of opened the show up to that, and with any luck, it won't go right into the toilet and turn into Jerry Springer. We'll do our best. People have been asking about the puppy. I got a puppy 3 months ago, German Shepherd. He is growing, I think, hourly. I just posted some pictures on Facebook, and there's a before and after picture, so to speak. There's a picture of the day we got him, and now he's 5 months and 10 days old. He's 60 pounds now, and he's changing color, which is interesting with German Shepherds. They start out as puppies almost entirely black, and then the tan starts to come through the black, and the black is falling off all over the place. We're finding, balls of fuzz, black fuzz all around the house. I think I'm vacuuming every single day. But he's changing color, and he's just growing and growing. Hopefully, I won't go broke trying to feed him, because he tends to eat everything and anything, and he never seems to be full. I know you're supposed to regulate how much you feed him, and we do. We give him meat as well as dry food, but he just never seems to be full. I don't know. I know that he's going to grow until probably a year, so we've got another 7 months. We'll see how big he gets. The vet predicts that he'll get between 90 and 110 pounds. I'm going for the 110 because he's already 60 pounds, and he's only at 5 months. We have a new sponsor I want to mention, moneyandtechnology.com. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. We've created an ad for them that we will be playing during the commercial section of the show, so that will be coming up. thank you very much for your sponsorship. We appreciate that. And if anybody else is interested in sponsoring on the Douglas Coleman Show or running an ad, you can email us at radio@douglascolemanmusic.com for more details. Okay, so now on to the music portion of the show. We've got 2 songs to play today. The first one up is by George Hendrickson, and the song is called Give. The song is produced by Stuart Epps, who is a friend of mine who has produced 4 of my songs. Stuart is a great producer, fantastic producer, and he's worked with some of the top people in the industry, including Elton John and Led Zeppelin and Bad Company and Bill Wyman and just anybody who's anybody, particularly in the British music scene. So that'll be the first song up, followed by a song called Sing to the World by The Mystics. And The Mystics are from Corpus Christi, Texas. Their members are Angel on guitar and lead vocals, Caleb on drums and vocals, Chris on lead guitars, and Dr. Tom on bass. So without further ado, the music, and then our interview.
Today's the day that I realize our own creations can inspire life, and we decide who we are. I know sometimes we hurt. Sometimes we must be strong. As time goes by, we live and learn. Some will win, and some will lose. And we decide who we are. I know we can go back. Our hearts sometimes give out. So I sing to the world, sing to my life. I sing to the world, high up above.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EWPSproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me this spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
Hi, this is Douglas Coleman, host of The Douglas Coleman Show. I'd like to tell you about a great blog called Money and Technology. Money and Technology is a blog for people who want to start investing in technology. They often post ideas to make money online, such as social media marketing strategies. In today's world, there's all kinds of money to be made in the technology industry. Whether you want to launch a career in the tech world, or you want to start using social media marketing strategies to earn passive income at home. In addition to learning about investing in technology via stocks, you will discover many new ideas to make money online. The world of technology changes every single day. If you want to be on the cutting edge, you need to read Money and Technology Daily. Please go to their website at moneyandtechnology.com. That's moneyandtechnology.com.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Hey guys, looking to add something fresh and new to your listening lineup? Well, go ahead and check out The Douglas Coleman Show. It's a syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Their focus is on music artists, but they also feature actors, filmmakers, screenwriters, authors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining.
Bondi Guest House in Jomtien Beach, Pattaya, Thailand. And their guest house offers beachfront accommodations with all rooms having sea views. Some rooms have balconies overlooking the sea as well. The Jomtien nightlife is within an easy stroll, and the beach is right outside your door. The attractions of Pattaya City nightlife are also just a few minutes ride away. Food is available 24 hours and offer a selection of European and Thai food. The owners, Colin and Malcolm, look forward to welcoming you to the Bondi. For more information, email Colin at bondipattaya, BONDIPATTAYA, at yahoo.co.uk. And if you do contact them, please mention that you heard about it on The Douglas Coleman Show.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship, that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Go listen, download, and subscribe to The Douglas Coleman Show. It's available at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. Also on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. The Douglas Coleman Show is an internationally syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Our focus is on music artists, but we also feature producers, authors, directors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining. Again, it's available today at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. You can also connect with them on Facebook at Douglas Coleman Show 1, follow on Twitter at Douglas Coleman 3, and you can even find them on TuneIn Radio. Again, that's the Douglas Coleman Show at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS, iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, and more. Go listen, download, subscribe, and share with your social networks today.
Warning, the following episode deals with political and social commentary that some may find controversial. In a direct exercise of our First Amendment right to free speech, we here at the Douglas Coleman Show feel strongly that all Americans are entitled to express their political and social views. If you think that perhaps your feelings might be hurt by listening to this broadcast, then please do not listen to this show. Go to your safe space, put your fingers in your ears, and hum something to drown us out. For the rest of you, please enjoy the show, and remember, freedom means the right to peacefully disagree.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Hello, Jesse, how are you?
All is well. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I got to say, before we start the interview, that I am a big fan of your show, The Fallen State. I've seen several of the episodes that you've posted on YouTube. Really like what you have to say. I like the way you've got it set up. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. Do you remember that show back in the 70s?
I don't.
Oh, it was on really, really late. That's why they called it Tomorrow. It was like on at 1 a.m. And
okay.
He did a very one-on-one sort of intimate interview setup. He had John Lennon. He had lots of different people on. Your set, the way it's set up, is very reminiscent of that show. One of my shows that I liked, in the 70s, as far as like Dick Cavett was another one.
I remember him.
Great interviewer.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We get a lot of feedback from around the world, really, about the fallenstate.tv. It helps a lot of people, so they enjoy it. So thank you for that. That means a lot to me.
Well, you're very welcome. The reason I bring that up is because the questions that I've got for you are primarily from what I've taken from the show, from things that you've said. And I just wanted to ask you about them. So if I
That's a nice idea. I like that.
If I misquote you, please correct me, okay? Because I'm just going by what you said on the show with different guests that you've had on. And so let's just do a little quick background here. So in case there's one or two people on this planet that don't know who you are. You were born in Midway, Alabama, and raised in Comer Hill, Alabama. Your birthday is May 22nd, which is great because we're one day apart. Mine's May 21st, so I like that.
Amazing.
You were born on a plantation where your ancestors had been slaves a century earlier. You lived with your grandparents. Your parents divorced and then moved away?
No, my father and mother were dating as teenagers, and he got her pregnant, but he didn't want to get married. He denied it. So she ended up marrying my stepfather before I was born so that I would not be born out of wedlock. During those days, it was an embarrassment to have children out of wedlock. So I was born with my stepfather and mother.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then they moved to Indiana.
Right. They moved from Alabama to Indiana. A lot of the folks, once they became adults, they moved up north to New York or Chicago, Indiana. Some people were other directions, Florida and those places. But my parents moved to Indiana. Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but you stayed in Alabama with your grandparents, correct?
Right. I wanted to stay down there because, I had this desire for my real father. And, I just, even though my stepfather was a good, decent man, I personally did not accept that because I had a yearning for my real father. And that's why I even teach people today or tell people that the worst thing that can happen to boys and girls of all color, never mind the race, is to be turned away from your fathers, because when you're turned away from the father, it leaves a void in your life, and you try to fulfill that void with other things: money, love, friendship, education, whatever, but nothing can fulfill that void until you return to your father. And it's the worst thing that can happen to a child.
I think that the void that is created without the father can also lead kids to try to fill the void with other things that aren't so good. Education would be a good thing to fill it with, but I think a lot of
education. Well, you're not able to fill it with education. A lot of people think that once you're educated, you get a degree, master's degree, PhD, and all kinds of degrees. You think that it's going to fulfill that emptiness you have, but it doesn't. And that's why they're disappointed with their education. Education is good, but education should not, I don't want people to think that once they're educated, it's going to fulfill that void, that emptiness that they have. It helps provide for you. You get a nice job or start a business or do your own thing that way.
Right.
But it doesn't fulfill that void, that yearning deep down in your soul for the Father. And the only thing that will fulfill that is, if you can't be with your father in a physical way, you need to forgive him for not being there. And once you forgive him and your mother, then God will forgive you, and he'll become your father. He'll fulfill that emptiness. Nothing else can do it.
Do you think a lot of kids that try to fill that void with things like drugs and sex before marriage and getting in trouble, violence, do you think all of that is a byproduct of the lack of the father, or can be a byproduct of that?
100%. It's nothing else but that. Most of them resent their mothers, and in some cases their grandmother. And it doesn't matter what color. And so the anger that they have for their mothers and the yearning for the father is what's missing. Most kids, exception to the rule, but most people don't resent their fathers, but they yearn for their fathers. They believe they've been told that their fathers didn't love them. That's why he wasn't there, or he was mean to your mother and to their mother. And a lot of times mothers set their children up by making them believe that the father was just mean. And the kids tend to identify with the mother because that's all they have. So they started resenting their father with their mother resentment. It's not their own. And they think that it's their own resentment, but it's not. They yearn for their fathers and they resent their mothers and grandmothers.
Is this more of a problem with boys than girls, or do you think it's the same?
It's absolutely the same for both. If a girl is turned away from her father, she starts looking for love in all the wrong places. Mm-hmm. She get, just screwed up by boys and men. Most girls resent their mothers. That's why they become like their mothers, because you become like whatever it is or whomever it is you resent. And so, and they take on the same personality and attitude as their mothers. And except each generation get worse because anger get worse with the generations if you don't show them how to overcome it.
One of the things you said that I found interesting was you said that black people were better off under Jim Crow.
Black people were better off under the Jim Crow law in that, I don't know if it forced, but the toughness of that law made the families stay together. It caused them to love what's right, meaning loving God, loving truth. They worked for themselves. They bought land, they owned homes. They educated their children in the schools, in black schools. It made blacks more independent. But once you took away the Jim Crow law, which should have been taken away because it was a law that was put on by the government, and it restricted blacks to it restricted blacks from moving and living in other areas, but it made them become, it made them stick together as families, and fathers and mothers stayed together, and children saw that example. They taught their kids how to work, and the kids would grow up and do the same thing. But once they took the law away, and then the government became the daddy of the family, and the corrupt so-called civil rights leaders became the head of the people. It's just been downhill ever since.
That was one of the things you said also, was that you were a real critic of LBJ's Great Society. You said something like LBJ took away the fathers, the men from the black families. What did you mean by that exactly?
Well, I do want to say I'm glad they changed the Jim Crow law or laws, because that's the only thing they needed to do. And so the same laws that protected and governed white America should have applied to black people. So the only thing they really needed to do was take that law away that restricted black people and then left them alone, and everything else would have come together on its own. The Great Society came with the Democrats, by the way, where they came in and they said to black people, we're going to take care of you. Racism is holding you back. And so under Lyndon B. Johnson, supported by the so-called civil rights leaders, they said, we're going to give you governmental programs. We're going to give you checks, and we're going to give you money. But you can't have a father in the homes. And a lot of black people decided, okay, the father can't be here. We'll go for the check rather than the family or the father. And what they don't know, and maybe they did know, is that once you remove that father, the wife and children are left open for the government to come in and take over, for evil to come in and take over, because there's a spiritual order to life, whether we know it or not, believe it or not, live it or not, is God and Christ, Christ and man, man over woman, and woman over children. And so the men represent Christ in the family and on earth. And when you remove the Christ away from the home, then evil takes over. And that's what the Democratic Party did. They took over under Lyndon B. Johnson and others.
So you don't think that the intention was good to try to help black people from getting away from Jim Crow, and the welfare and the public housing and all that was kind of reparations for the repression for the last 100 years or so? Or do you think that there was an evil intent to...
I think that under knowing the corruption of the Democratic Party and the black leadership, so-called leadership, I think it was intentional, because, I mean, why would you take the father away from his wife and children and leave the wife and children open so that you can control them? And that's what happened. And if it wasn't, let's say we want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, yes, it was good intention. Well, they've seen for the last 60 years that it didn't work. It is not working. It's getting worse. Why don't we see the effort of them trying to put it back together? There's no effort at all from the black leadership or the Democratic Party to put the family back together. They keep offering more governmental programs. They keep blaming the white folks. They're not telling them, we got to go back to basics. We got to go back to number one. We got to put the families back together so that these people can get off welfare, get off the government dole, and start taking care of themselves. That's how you build character. There's no effort on the part of the Democrats to do that. Even Barack Obama, who was in there for 8 years, he had the power of the United States government behind him. He wouldn't even go in there and clean up the gang violence and the drugs and make it a little easier for the good blacks that are living in those areas, because they don't want them to be independent. They want them down and out, angry and blaming, in order that they may use that to get power and wealth.
It was very surprising to me, and I think to a lot of people, that things got a lot worse under Obama, when everybody thought, especially the people who voted for Obama in 2008, thought that he was going to be, and I'm speaking kind of figuratively, but that he was going to be sort of a savior for this. That we thought, okay, we're going to elect the first black president. This is going to show that racism is over, that a black man can make it to the top of the pile, to the top of the mountain in America. And exactly the opposite happened. And I think people got very disillusioned with that. They said, well, what happened? Why didn't this guy try to bridge the gap between the races? All he did was divide us and make it worse.
I tried to warn the people back in 2008 not to vote for Barack Obama, especially after it was discovered that he spent 20 years sitting under Jeremiah Wright Jr., his preacher from Chicago. And Jeremiah Wright Jr. hate whites, he hate Jews, he hate America. He said, GG America. And Jeremiah Wright Jr. is close friends with Louis Farrakhan, who called white people the blue-eyed devil. He hates the Jews. He hates anything that's good. Barack Obama sat under that guy for 20 years. He said that this guy was like an uncle to him. He baptized him, he married he and Michelle, baptized their children. He gave money to this guy for 20 years. And yet, he said he didn't know the guy spoke racism from the pulpit. And so I said then, this man, Obama, is all those guys, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and all of them packed in one, and that he's going to be the worst president that this country has ever experienced. And he was exactly what I said. He divided the races like no one else in the history of America. He invited Black Lives Matter to the White House, the heads of Black Lives Matter, and after they were chanting, what do we want, dead cops, when do we want it now, pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. Barack Obama has the same mentality as those people have, and he kept giving the impression that white officers are against police officers, against regular black folks or against black people. He kept bringing up the Jim Crow law that doesn't exist anymore. This guy is an evil man because he has the same evil, angry soul that most black people have, but especially those radical black people. Barack Obama, as I write about in my book, The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood, he grew up without a father. His mother was white, and she hated her own color. She taught that America was a racist society, so did his father. Obama is empty because that void he has, only his father can fulfill it. He doesn't have that. And so he too blamed everybody. And this guy hunger and thirst for power and wealth. And so he kept blacks in that state of anger in order to use them for his own personal gain. Obama believes in the redistribution of wealth and power, and that's what he's all about and nothing else.
Well, he definitely has socialist tendencies, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But what surprised me about Obama was that you would think that somebody who rises to the president of the United States would give up this notion of the white people are evil and that, all of the institutional racism and stuff. I mean, he plowed right through it and got right to the top. You think he could relax once he got up there?
If you understand that Obama loved power, he's a socialist, he doesn't love America, he hates whites, and he seemed to identify with Islam more than anything else. He hates Christians. He is not a Christian. And if you can understand where he's coming from, you will see that Obama is about socialism. Obama is about power and wealth. Obama is not about building and uniting, making America great again. And the only way he could get what he wanted is keep the country divided. White people, one of the worst things you could call a white person is a racist. And he knows that. He understands how that works. And so he kept blacks in a state of anger, blaming white folks so that he could keep whites in fear to gain the power and use blacks as victims and pretended that he was trying to help them so that he can get what he wants. It's never been about anything else. You got to realize that our battle is a spiritual battle. It's a warfare between good and evil, right versus wrong. There's no such thing as racism. Racism is a made-up lie. It has never existed. It is an illusion. And so we've been trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And so you have blacks and whites and others who are evil. You have blacks, whites, and others who are good. And we must start seeing it in that way if we want to win this battle.
What was your opinion of Martin Luther King?
Growing up, I had a lot of respect for him. Martin Luther King Jr. taught that we should overcome evil with good, that there was good and bad in all people. He tried to encourage blacks not to be angry, because there are good white folks and good other people out there that are not like the government. They're not like the Jim Crow thing. And so I have a lot of respect for him for that. Unfortunately, when he was assassinated, the traitors of the so-called movement took over, and they turned love into hate because they had a different agenda. Jesse Jackson, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. threw him out of the organization several times because Jackson has always been about Jesse Jackson. And when Martin Luther King was assassinated, Jesse Jackson took what looked like red blood and put it on his shirt, went around telling people Dr. King died in his arms. After being pressed by the media, he admitted he had lied, that he did that himself. And so I had a lot of respect for Martin Luther King Jr., and I have none for the people who kept going and they took the movement in a different direction.
You were a Trump supporter from the very beginning, correct?
From day one.
From day one, yeah. Okay.
When Donald Trump was I turned the TV on one day, and Donald Trump, I heard him announcing that he was running. And when he said that he was going to put a big, beautiful wall around the borders, he's going to deport illegal aliens, he's going to protect us from radical Islam, cut back on taxes, get rid of all these stupid restrictions and regulations that prevents business from functioning, and get rid of Obamacare, I knew then that Donald Trump would become the next president of his country. And I was right about it. He's what America needs.
He certainly tapped into the disillusion of people for the past 8 years under Obama. And
yes.
And the one thing that I found interesting was that every poll except the LA Times picked Hillary to win. And I'm beginning to believe that the polls, okay, some of them are fake news. Some of them we know were, the Clinton News Network. But I think a lot of people just didn't tell. When they did the telephone, who you're going to vote for.
Yeah.
I think people just said, I don't know yet. But then when those people got to the voting booth, they said, you know what, I'm going to vote for Trump. And that's why a lot of people didn't know that those states were going to flip. I'm sure Hillary went to bed that night thinking that she was president already.
Yep.
Yep.
I personally know people and came across people of several races who were voted for Trump, but they would not say it out loud because they run the risk of being attacked. They run the risk of losing their jobs, and they were just too afraid to let it be known that they were voted for President Trump. So you're absolutely right. I believe when the surveyors called, the people said, I don't know, or maybe even lied and said they were voting for Hillary, knowing that they would not be voted for her. So I absolutely agree with you.
I think that's too bad that people had to be ashamed to say that they supported Trump. Or afraid, right. Afraid to be called a racist. I mean, this is how far the left has gone, regressive left. I mean, they've gone over to the point where they've come back around to the right. And essentially, they're the fascists now. Because they're threatening people, they're intimidating people. The thing with Milo at Berkeley was a perfect example. And I saw you were at the Southern California Junior State of America on February 25th. I saw the video of that, and you got kicked out, basically, didn't you, by the teachers,
I did. I was, they have these conferences 3 times a year in the state of California, where the high schoolers from around the state get together and they have political discussions. They invite speakers from the Republican, Republican representative versus a Democratic one. So they had this liberal speaker come in that morning, and he spoke for an hour, dealt with the kids. And I was supposed to come in from 11 a.m. Pacific time to noon. I went in, and within 20 minutes or so, my speech was over because it was over 860 kids there, around about, and they told me I can't mention God. In advance, they said you can't mention God, but they want me to talk about the difference between Obama administration and Donald Trump's administration. They wanted me to deal with racism and, political stuff. And so I went in there and I opened up dealing with those things. And right away, it was 70% of the 860 or so kids were liberal Democrats or liberal. And right away, they started moaning and groaning and carrying on. And they started to get out of control. The liberal teachers were getting mad at me. And so the host of the event came up and he asked me, about 15 minutes into my speech, he asked, could I just stop and take questions right now because it was going out of control. And I said, yeah, I'll take some questions. When he announced that, the kids just ran to the mic. I thought they were running out of the building, but they were running to the mics. And there was just lines on both sides of the room around the wall. And they started asking me different questions about homosexuality, about Black Lives Matter. They were saying things like homosexuals need special laws and special rights. And I'm like, no, they don't. We're all one in the United States of America, and the same law that protects me and everybody else should protect homosexuals. We don't need special laws for the so-called LGBT folks. They're governed by the same law. I mean, that drove them nuts. And then I was asked about Black Lives Matter, and I explained to them that Black Lives Matter is a far-left, liberal, radical, agitative, evil organization that's worse than the KKK. And man, the teacher was burning. The liberal teacher, there was a woman by the name of Yvonne England. She was one of the coordinators of this event, and she's a feminist Obama supporter. I found that out later. She was like steaming, so she came up on the stage and assaulted me. We put out a new video of that, but she assaulted me, and she said, "You have to leave." And I said, "Why do I have to leave?" "Because you made some of the kids cry." Apparently, some of the liberal kids were crying.
Oh.
And I asked, "Well, did you put out the liberal?" "No, because he didn't make the kids make the kids cry." So in the meantime, she's pulling me off the stage. And I asked her to take her hands off me. She had no right to touch me like that. And so they finally said, all right. The coordinator said, I told the kids, well, you can talk to Jesse out in the hallway. And so they came out in the hallway and they were asking questions. They were interested, but they were mad. And this teacher saw that they were asking questions and I was telling them what I thought about things. She made them all go back into the conference room. Like, you can't talk to him out here, get back in there. And I finally got out of there. But the whole thing for me lasted about 20 minutes or so. And it was supposed to go for an hour.
When did we become so thin-skinned in this country? I mean, the idea that, oh, you made the kids cry. I mean,
I know.
People are going to say things that you don't like. People are going to insult you. That's the real world. That's
the real world.
And if you teach these kids that if somebody says something that upsets you, that you have a right to go run to a safe space, how are you going to get along in a corporation? If you go to work in a place where there's 200 or 300 people, certainly there's going to be somebody in there that doesn't like you.
That's
you just
right.
have to deal with it.
It's the way of life.
I don't understand why these kids have become so thin-skinned. I mean, it wasn't like that when I went to school.
Well, the reason they're like that is that they don't have fathers and mothers being a good example for them. And then they go off to school. They're being brainwashed. They've been lied to. They've been catered to. And many of them are spoiled at home. And so they're just not developing that inner strength to deal with life that you and I developed as we were growing up. And it's unfortunate, but these kids are being catered to. And once they become adults, though, they go out there in the real world, they're going to realize it's not what they've been told. And so it's just so unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I do want to say that the Republican kids at that event, and apparently they do these types of things for the fall, winter, spring, and summer. And I spoke at the winter one, of course. But the Republican kids were giving me the thumbs up. They were applauding. They were happy at what I was saying. They agreed with it. And once all that stuff went down, they came and apologized. They felt bad for me that this had happened to me. And they were saying that these kids are weak. They can't take anything. And I noticed that the Republican kids, they seem stronger. They dress better, even though they all dress nice at this event, but they look better than the children of the lie.
It baffles my mind because I think that, challenges in life is what builds character with people. If you just sail through life, excuse me, and everything is handed to you, you have no appreciation for working hard and obtaining something for yourself. That's where the true value of things. You've seen these rich kids who are just given money by their parents, and they don't know how to manage money. They go through every single dime that the parents give them. There's nothing left. They don't know how to save money. They don't know how to work for it, and they don't know how to respect it. And
that's right.
I feel bad for I probably won't be alive when these kids become in power, but God help us, No,
it's unfortunate. The one thing I do want to say before we end is that I started a nonprofit organization 27 years ago called BOND, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. And we are rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. We don't get money from the government, never have. We have a home for young men. We tutor, counsel, and we help find jobs, start businesses. If they have finished high school and they want to go to college, we help with that. Or if they want to start a business, from 15 years and up, we train them. We show them every aspect of running a business. We show them that how to forgive their parents first, because once they forgive their parents, then God forgive them and they feel 100% better. Once they forgive, they realize that it has nothing to do with their color, but it's about the character, and that they have been suffering due to the destruction of the family and the lack of moral character. But we're training them and we're showing them in the right way to go. And people can check us out by going to rebuildingtheman.com, rebuildingtheman.com. We have a radio show, a TV show, YouTube channel, all the good things up there to help people take control of their own lives and stop whimpering, whining, and begging and blaming and wanting something for free. It's not the way life is. You're never going to succeed. You're never going to have a good life as long as you have that attitude.
Well, I agree with you. I also want to mention your book real quick before you go. It's called The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood. I'm assuming your book talks about those topics that you just covered.
Absolutely. It's I've written several books, but this is one that I've always wanted to write. And it deals with what's really wrong. It proves that there's no such thing as racism. A quick example, I write about Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin, and I explain what happened in their lives and how their father and mothers failed them by not being married and being there for them. Michael Brown, for example, his parents were not together. He, whenever his father tried to go pick him up, the mother made it impossible to do it. Michael finally went to live with his father, but the father life was out of control. So he went to live with his grandmother. She couldn't handle him. And Michael felt that same void and emptiness that all people feel when they are not close to their fathers. And Michael felt unloved. He became a thug, and he ended up robbing. And as we saw, he robbed a store. He went out and attacked a cop. Michael Brown is dead, and Trayvon Martin, because of Michael Brown and his failing family. Same thing with Trayvon, a thug. And instead of the blacks telling other blacks, don't do this, get married, raise your children, they blame it on the white folks, on a false illusion of racism. But it had everything to do with the destruction of the family. And I give example, Barack Obama, Muhammad Ali, Louis Farrakhan, Tupac, all those guys. It's the same problem. It's the destruction of the family. And so I urge everybody and their mama to read The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can go to Barnes & Noble, any bookstore. And you can also order it from our website, rebuildingaman.com.
Jesse, thanks so much for coming on the show. I know you said you got another interview.
Right, yeah, they just came to the door to tell me. But it was fun. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Best of luck with everything you're doing. I appreciate it. We need more people like you in this world. Maybe we have you, so we need to keep growing it. You're absolutely right. Maybe we can put the country back together again. I hope so. I'm not giving up, that's for sure. All right, Jesse, take care. All right, thank you, buddy. I absolutely appreciate it. Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guest, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Thank you very much, Jesse.